Ha, ha. Hi everyone, Brass the Monkey here, the internet's busiest music nerd. It's time for a review of the new Ed Sheeran album, Subtract. Singer-songwriter Ed Sheeran, one of the biggest artists out there in the mainstream, truly needs no introduction at this point. He has just come through with his 6th full-length LP over here, Subtract, and it's an interesting shift in the Ed Sheeran discography for a few reasons. I feel like Ed, leading up to this point in his catalog, has been progressively going poppier and poppier and poppier, especially on records such as Divide. And don't get me wrong, I mean, while I have not been crazy about this change, this has led to huge streaming numbers and big hit songs for Edward. So it is interesting in this long-awaited edition in his series of records where, you know, he's pretty much like hitting us with math equation signs. We got multiply, and we got addition, and we got divide, and we got equals. But no, comparatively, Subtract over here is not only a record that sees Ed taking things in a simpler direction, not piling too much instrumentation on, hence why the subtraction sign makes sense, but thematically there are a lot of songs here that deal in loss or the potential loss of romance. Maybe a relationship being in a state where things kind of hang in the balance. There's a lot of questions. Are things going to move forward from here? Can we make it past this obstacle? Can we make it through this year? So I respect the fact that Ed seemingly took his time and put a lot of thought into how he would reach this point in the series. And it's led to some highs. However, I will say Ed Sheeran, for a lot of reasons, has never been one of my favorite singer-songwriters of all time, and many of his shortcomings and artistically basic tendencies also carry over onto this project too. So I don't know, I'm just kind of at a loss with this thing, a bit torn. Because while it does feel like an improvement in some respects over his last couple of LPs, and there is a lot of focus going on throughout the record, there are some things about it, at its core, I'm not crazy about. And I guess let me start to get into the songs here to kind of explain as to why. From the opening track, Ed's very boyish, melodramatic singer-songwriter style doesn't really tug at my heartstrings. But I can sense that, at least by Ed Sheeran's standards, this particular song in this record, it's kicking things off in a way that feels raw and very emotionally exposed for him. I'm getting similar vibes off the track Life Goes On as well. I can sense Ed as an artist is attempting to push some emotional buttons here, but at least for me, it just doesn't cut that deep. Take the following track, Saltwater, for example, whose instrumentation sounds like something out of a soundtrack from a big-budget rom-com that has a very mid score on Rotten Tomatoes. So musically, it's not quite there, but I will give it to Ed on the lyrical side of this track, because I think the imagery of being submerged in water and it being cold, this cold salt water rushing in a way, and all of it being a part of a dream, certainly is evocative. However, it doesn't take long on this record for some of the instrumentals to get kinda tacky, like in the case of Eyes Closed, where the basic beats and super heavy chorus effects on Ed's voice frankly stink. They make Ed's singing sound really sour and unnecessarily mushy, which is sad because his performance on this track vocally is actually really good, especially on the chorus as he's belting out, "I keep dancing with my eyes closed." There probably could have been a dozen different ways that Ed could have worked in some beats and some electronics to give a song where he's referencing dancing a bit of a groove without it sounding this freaking, I guess, regimented and plain, like the musical equivalent to some cheesy millennial home goods, I don't know, like a plaque about wine or something. I have similar issues with the tracks Dusty as well as Curtains later on the record, where obviously Ed and all involved are trying to bring a bit of a pop or maybe even a rock flair into the record to give it a bit of variation, some tempo. But honestly, throwing all of this extra stuff in just makes the songs sound milder or just flavorless. Like, for example, the track Sycamore is so airbrushed and glossed out, I feel like I'm listening to a completely toothless piece of Christian rock. Because, you know, any textures that are a bit too rough might inspire a sinful thought or something. In my opinion, it's often the most skeletal cuts on the record that are the most emotionally impactful. Case in point, the song Vega, or even End of Youth, which not only works because Ed's vocals and the pianos on the cut remain the focal point of the track no matter what point you're in, but the vocal breaks where he's singing about it being a long year hit hard, and he's really going off in the lyrics in this track about hitting some kind of emotional rock bottom. The following, Colorblind, though, I thought was one of a few moments on the record that just feel instrumentally too plain and basic. And if you don't know what I mean, just listen to the plinky, dinky pianos and strings on this cut. It sounds like something out of a musical piece from a YouTube kids channel trying to get 2-year-olds to sleep with a lullaby. Like, it's really no surprise that Ed Sheeran routinely finds himself in these positions where people are trying to sue him because of the similarity of his songs to others, and not to say he's uniquely guilty of anything here, but he doesn't dress his chords up or his instrumentation up in any way creatively or interestingly. Everything just has like the plainest possible presentation that it could have, and as a result, like, you can hear so much deja vu musically going on in a lot of what he does. Some more details, some nuances, some textures, really some anything would help alleviate this, but Ed just continues to show no interest in it. The track Spark, though, I would say is one of the few instances on this LP where really piling the instrumentation on has some pretty positive results, though still the opening piano chords sound like something Macklemore would rap over, legitimately. Still, once the drums and strings come in, those feel actually quite a bit more organic than any sets of drums and strings at any other point on the project. The overly sentimental lyrics about romantic sparks do make me roll my eyes a little bit. However, there is kind of this sense of worry throughout the track about whether or not this relationship is going to make it, is it going to survive, this spark kind of building into a fire that's kind of burning everything. There's volatility there. Something is at stake, and while rarely are Ed's observations on love and relationships in this LP super profound, maybe they don't need to be. Being on the money might just be enough, I suppose, because I can't say what Ed is saying here in terms of, like, you know, framing and the general functionality of love and romantic connections is toxic or super inaccurate. It's really the lack of specifics and details that make things difficult to invest in, which is the case for the closing track, a very folky number in which I do appreciate the beds of acoustic instrumentation here, but the vocal harmonies still sound so artificial the way they're layered up and touched up. Still, I do think Ed brings a nice touch with all the nimble melodic breaks across the track that are obviously meant to be a nod to the region of Scotland that is referenced in the title. But overall, I found the track to be a bit inconclusive as a finisher. Maybe in a respect I do understand that, given that it does kind of leave things off with a cliffhanger. It's kind of a goodbye with Ed saying that no heart will love this person as much as his did, which is a sad sentiment, yes, but I kind of leave this track feeling not too many feels because I have more questions than feels. What is this love you're singing about? What is the story behind it? Why are we at this place of distance and impasse? Why the location? I need to know these things. And while I'm sure there are answers to them that maybe some hardcore Ed Sheeran fans are furiously typing in the comments, what I'm trying to get to here is that Ed isn't offering a lot of these answers in the song itself. And as a result, I'm just having a hard time getting excited about or invested in the song, even if it does sound pretty on the surface. However, it is nice to know that Ed has been kind of playing the long game with this new record of his, because this track, from what I understand, is about 10 years old. So it's cool to see him kind of add this song that contributes to a greater theme across this record. Yeah, at the end of the day, I wish I was crazier about this record. I wish I loved it more, because I can recognize that in a way it is better than some of his recent output, but I still found the track list to be kind of a mixed bag. There were some highlights that got me going a little bit emotionally, but there are others that I thought were pretty underwhelming, fell flat on their face, while the bulk of the record, in my opinion, is really just kind of very bland, inoffensive singer-songwriter music that is kind kind of low on details, nuances, and heavy, potent drama. While sure, there is a drama on a lot of these tracks, I would say it's more Diet Coke drama. Yeah, we're talking more warm, flat soda, just in a tiny glass cup. I'm feeling a life vibe on this album over here. Transition, have you given this record a listen? Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you rate it? You're the best, you're the best. What should I review next? Hit the like if you like. Please subscribe and please don't cry. Hit the bell as well. Over here next to my head, it's another video you can check out. Hit that up or the link to subscribe to the channel. Anthony Fantano, Ed Sheeran, forever.